Hi, my name is Steph. This is my channel. Welcome back. This is Cursed or Crushing It. Thank you so much for being here. If you have watched some of my other videos and you're here from one of them, thank you so much for coming back. If this is your first video of mine, thank you so much for clicking and giving me a chance. So, today I would like to talk about another Book of the Month Club book. This is also a vampire book, so this is a twofer in terms of, Book of the Month and also our vampire tier list.
All right, double prizes!
We have a lot to talk about. The book that I will be covering today is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by VE Schwab. I know our gal VE Schwab is quite an accomplished writer. She's written quite a few books. I know that she can be quite a polarizing author. And I was excited that this was my first book from her. Without getting too far into what I think about this book, I can kind of see why she receives some of the criticism that she does. So, sorry VE Schwab, but I kind of get it. Anyway, before I get too far into this, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see some more of my book reviews on your feed. Okay, so now that I have that whole sentence out of the way, I guess, let's just kind of get right into this. Today, my fun drink is coffee.
Coffee!
I decided to do this review almost immediately after I finished the book. I finished it last night. Right now, it's about noon. I just got onto my lunch break at work, and I was trying to write the script, and it was starting to make my fingers hurt. And I was like, you know what? I just need to get this out. I need to talk about this. And yeah, let's get into why exactly I need to talk about this. So, what is this book generally? This book follows the stories of 3 different women. Oh, hey, look at this. 3 young women. Their bodies planted in the same soil. Their stories tangling like roots. One grows high, one grows deep, and one grows wild. And all of them grow teeth, which is true. All of the women in this book have teeth. But yes, there are 3 women that we follow in this book, and let's talk about our first one. So our first gal that we meet, her name is Maria. She dies in 1523. We are following her at the end of her human life and the beginning of her vampire life. And what we know about Maria, she is a beautiful girl that is born into a pretty regular family. She is Spanish. She lives in Spain. Her notable traits are that she has a hot bod and red hair, like super duper red hair. Like people around her call it obscene. The color red, which is a choice. I bet that her hair looks fantastic though, honestly. But so one notable trait about Maria in her human life is that she is insatiable. We first see her and she is sucking the life literally out of a cherry pit. She talks numerous times actually about how cherries are her favorite food just in general, I'm pretty sure. But so she's saying that when she's able to get cherries and when she is eating cherries, that she sucks the pits until they're dry. And that's something that she's always done just because she's hungry all the time and she just constantly wants more food, which is kind of at odds with her hot bod, which is kind of funny. And that does come up at one point. And so when we first see Maria, she's sucking the life out of this cherry pit. She's just kind of hanging out. She's hanging out notably with both of her brothers. And they note that a religious pilgrimage is about to come through their town. Their town is on the way to this very important temple. And so as a result, they get a lot of people on pilgrimages that go through their town. And so, being good 1500s children, they generally go to where these people are when they pass through the main square, like where the inn is that they can stay in. They'll go up to these people on their journey when they're getting ready to take a break, and they'll try and sell things to them. So that's just what they do. That's the 1500s of it all, I guess. And this time when Maria goes to look at these people that are coming to town to see the prospects, the digs of who all is gonna show up and like who all they can cater to, she has like this moment with this very spooky lady who shows up. So she's a spooky lady dressed in widow garb. She is wearing like dark gray, and then she has like this veil that goes completely over her face, but like it kind of covers her whole top half, I would say, like her chest at least. She's wearing this gray like lace veil, so you can't really see her face at all. But regardless of this, Maria is completely mesmerized by this woman in this widow garb, like with this gray lace veil that she's wearing. And the way that it's described here, like Maria definitely finds her sexual awakening at this moment, at the ripe age of like 12 or something. She is down bad, as much as like a child can be when they're like just discovering this thing about themselves. And so she kind of like follows this widow around while the widow is in town. Notably, so this pilgrimage that's coming through the town, the widow is there with them, and that's not abnormal. But what is abnormal is that the widow stays behind after the pilgrimage moves on the next day. And so everyone's like, why is she here? And they're like whispering, this is the 1500s, keep in mind. They're whispering like, oh, she's a witch. Oh no. Which, in the 1500s, that's like not a good accusation to have leveled against yourself. So shortly after these like witch accusations are being thrown around about her, this widow leaves and she continues on wherever she's going. And we don't really see anything again with her, at least not soon. She just kind of like walks away. And so then we flash to a completely unrelated perspective. And we see Alice. Alice dies in 2019. And just like Maria, we see Alice right at the very end of her human life. We find out that Alice is from Scotland and that she is currently in the US attending university. And with Alice, we have so many flashbacks to different events that she had with her sister Caddy. We have no less than 6 of these. They always kind of come out of nowhere, and I didn't like them that much, but I thought that they told a really compelling story, so I have forgiven them. These flashbacks primarily center around how her sister dealt with the grief of their mother dying. So Alice and Caddy, their mother died when Alice was very young. And Alice carries a lot of like shame and a lot of kind of grief for herself, because she doesn't really know her biological mother that well. However, her sister Caddy, who is 3 years older, Caddy does remember a lot of their mom. And so Caddy carries a ton of grief that she just kind of assumes that Alice also carries. And that's really not the case. And it's really hard for Alice to like relate to her sister and to like really grapple with this, because her sister's assuming that she knows a lot more than she actually does. And I feel really bad for her, because like it's really not Alice's fault that she's 3 years younger than Caddy and that her mother died at the time that she did. And so I also feel bad for Caddy, right? Because she's trying so hard to just hold on to her mom. But Alice literally is not equipped to do the same thing just because she was too young. And so there's this really like sad kind of feeling that you're getting from the two of them in these flashbacks, which is kind of why I found it annoying, because I was really just expecting like a sexy lesbian vampire book, and I wasn't expecting like the ins and outs of how one deals with grief with their sibling. But so we see Alice in like all of these periods of really like shame and guilt, because she just doesn't know her mom the same way that Caddy did, purely because she was 3 years younger than her when she died. And she just didn't have, 5-year-olds don't have a ton of time to like make lasting memories and lasting formative memories of people around them. So I don't know exactly how old she was when her mother died, but she was too young to really remember a lot. So I would assume that she was, 5 or younger, which if she's 3 years younger than Caddy, that would put Caddy at about 6, 7, 8 years old. You can learn a lot more about someone with that kind of time, especially like at that age too. So I feel for both of them in this sense, because it's just like swinging and missing on a lot of levels for the two of them. And it's really painful for both of them to have those swings and misses. So we find out very quickly that Alice is carrying these really complex shame and grief emotions, and that a lot of it is centered around her sister Caddy, but also that dynamic with her sister, and both of their collective grief for their mother. So we get this flashback kind of out of nowhere, but also kind of because Alice is giving herself a pep talk of like, I'm going to go to a party. I'm at university. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be like Caddy, because Caddy was like, really outgoing, loved to go like do all kinds of stuff. And so she is saying, I'm going to be like Caddy. I'm going to be like my older sister. I'm going to go to this party and I'm going to have a great time in this new country where I only really know my roommates. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to do it because that's what Caddy wants me to do. And I'm going to make my sister proud here across the world from her, because Caddy is in Scotland and Alice is in like California. So she's over here in my neck of the woods. I'm not in California, but close enough, basically. Anyway, at this party, Alice is like kind of bugging. She's like, at first isn't having that great of a time, but then she notices a very pretty lady. So great. We're back to the gals for the gals. Alice notices a very pretty lady who she later learns her name is Lottie. Lottie has violet curls. That is like her primary trait that we're introduced to her with. And she's at this party at this co-op, because of course she's at a co-op because she's in college in California. And Alice meets Lottie. They see each other from across the room. Not really. They're like in front of like this green wall and they're just like, oh, hey girl. And so Alice takes Lottie home. They have a little romp in the hay. They have a great little time. And then Alice wakes up with what she thinks is a hangover. And she's like, wow, this is awful. And it's like morning time. She's like, doesn't feel well. She's like, ugh, this isn't great. And so she just like goes for a little nap. And she wakes up in the evening and she's like, wow, I still really don't feel good. She like goes for a walk and she ends up killing someone because she doesn't realize that she has woken up as a vampire. And yeah, so she like doesn't really realize it at first, and she's thinking to herself like, oh, this isn't good. And so she's kind of like comparing herself to like the common lore about vampires. And she's like, oh, crap. Like, the most important thing I just did. But then, like, she's like, oh, can I go in the sun? Yeah, I can go in the sun. Can I, like, eat anything else? No, I can't eat anything else. Like, she's just kind of, like, going line by line through different things that she knows about vampires and trying to compare her situation to what she knows. And that's kind of cool. So you find out a little bit of, like, the lore about the vampires in this world, but I will give you a complete list of that later, just to make it a little bit more succinct. But Alice is slowly realizing that she is a vampire. And when she realizes that she's a vampire, she is like so angry. And Alice just goes on a mission basically to figure out what happened to her. The third person that we meet is named Charlotte. Charlotte dies in 1827. And Charlotte is from London. Well, she's not from London, but she's from England. She's from a different place, but she gets sent to London and she dies in London. She is kind of a society adjacent gal. Her family is well off enough that she is being prepared to be presented for the social season where people find husbands and wives. And so she is being sent to London in 1827 to be prepared for that. And she is prepared to be presented in 1828. So she's being prepared for the next year. Her aunt says that she is too much of a lost cause when she gets there for her to be presented that year. And besides, the season has already started, darling. The season is spring, but it's like capital S season in this case because, like, it's the season. It's where you find your match. It's where you go find your husband by dancing with him for, 20 minutes at a time for the entire freaking spring. Anyway, that's just 1827 things. But she is sent there kind of as a punishment, but also kind of as like some assurance to her family that she will get a husband. Because shortly before she was sent there, like kind of the thing that like starts this all off for her, Charlotte was caught kissing and like just generally being kind of more than friendly with her lady friend Jocelyn. And that's like very much not okay here. So when her family finds her being, less than chaste with her friend Jocelyn, they're like, all right, we need some assurance that you're going to give us a husband and an heir. So off to London you go to live with your aunt. She will train you this season. Next season you will be presented and you will have a husband. Congratulations. And Charlotte's just like, I really wish that hadn't happened. So I get it, honestly. But anyway, while Charlotte is in London, she's being brought to the social season parties, to like the matchmaking parties, just to kind of like get a test run, get a feel for the waters, get a feel for some of the suitors even that are available, because people will come back for multiple seasons if they don't find their spouse in the first season that they went. So she is, just kind of like scoping things out, meeting people. She's not being officially presented, so no one's expecting her to get a match, but she, she's around. She's just scoping things out. While she is scoping things out, she meets a lady named Sabine. And Sabine turns out to be a vampire, and Sabine ends up turning her, and they spend a century together in love. And then after that, the relationship kind of sours in this very like concrete way, and Charlotte spends the next 100 years running from Sabine. At that point, that's where the rest of the story like converges in on each other, I guess. Like you have these three gals running around. And then the whole point of the story, I guess, is that you see how these things converge. I will say I didn't really get that was the point of the book until... So I was here in the book. I would say that that's like 60%-ish. I don't know. I was well over halfway through the book before I fully realized that all of these stories were going to like converge and that they really had anything to do with each other. I guess I could have gotten that from the back of the book, but I did read this over several days, weeks, 3 of them basically, mind you. So forgive me, I did forget what the back of the book said at one point. I did not really get the point of this book. Like that wasn't really made clear, like what all this was going towards, until literally like 60% through this book. And then like the ending of this book really just, it like didn't do it for me. The way that it ended, I like, honestly, so not even knowing what was going on until in this copy, it's page 306 out of 530, mind you, 533, sorry. So I was on page 306 out of 533 before I kind of figured out what exactly the point of this was and why exactly we were following all of these stories. And then I was like, okay, cool. I guess I have an idea of what's going on. Yeah, cool. Like, this is interesting how this is all coming together. And this book had me, so it's 533 pages, right? I'm trying to find the exact moment where I was just like, are you kidding me? This is actually what's happening right now. So this book had me, like, I was still like pretty down with what was going on. I was like, enjoying myself for this much longer. Okay, this is up until page 525 out of 533. Literally, if the last pages in this book were not here, I feel like it would have been so much better. Like actually reading the last few pages of this book and how it ended, it kind of made me angry. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like I went through all of this. I didn't even know what was going on just for it to end like this. Like it ended on, let's see, how do I approach this without telling you exactly what happened? So I feel like there were a couple twists that were introduced just for the purpose of twisting. And like, it's like you get like a twist and then like, oh, a twist. Like, I don't know. The twist I can appreciate. I love a twist in a book.
What a twist!
You know, I like thrillers, I like mysteries, I like that kind of stuff. I can appreciate a good twist in a book and a good, like, gotcha moment from the author. But when I say, like, a twist and a twust, it's like a it's like an extra twist just thrown in there for like twisting's sake.
What a twist!
I don't know. It's like she got half of a corkscrew and was like, "Oh, what if I did a full corkscrew? That would be cool." What else could I twist in here? Oh, great. Let's just put it in.
What a twist!
Like it felt like a twist for the sake of twisting, for the sake of creating like a full barrel roll. Like it was so stupid, I have to say. And the way that this book ended, I'm really glad that there's been no sequel promised for this book. And I'm really glad that there was no epilogue provided for this book, because it ended about 7 pages too freaking late. And it ended on such a confusing and stupid note, I have to say. Like, so I've seen a lot of criticisms of VE Schwab, and people are like, wow, that twist was stupid. Like, wow, that ending was kind of stupid. And you know what? I kind of get it. I really vibed with like 98% of this book even. I vibed with so much of this book. And it really is tragic how it ended. Like, yeah. Like, oh my God. I just... It really was just like a twist for twisting's sake, and I can't get over it. It like kind of made me mad. I was like falling asleep reading this last night. I was fighting to keep my eyes open. My tired little eyes at 10 o'clock last night. I'm a grandma. I go to bed early. I was up late at 10 o'clock last night, and I forced myself to read like this terrible ending, just so I could say that I finished the book yesterday. And really, at what cost was that? Perhaps too much. But, like, whatever. Let's talk about the vampire traits, because that's a lot more palatable than the freaking rest of this book. Yeah, let's get into it. The vampire traits in this book and in this universe are as follows. So the sun makes them sick. But however, the sun does not kill them. They get like super sick like every day during the day. And that sickness drives them to go under the covers to get as far away from light as they can, but they'll still feel kind of crappy while the sun is up. They can feel that the sun is down because they feel better. Notably, vampires can train themselves to tolerate this and to help themselves blend in. These vampires drink blood, but they can also drink this blood when it's been mixed with other things. Several times in this story, we do see it mixed with like coffee. So that's kind of cool. And then on the subject of blood, if they drink someone's blood who has been drinking, or like a drunk person's blood, the vampires can also get drunk from that. So they can like curate their own kind of experience by feeding their marks, or by targeting marks that have drank something specific. And I thought that was pretty interesting that you can get drunk as a vampire. Another notable thing that was like one of the super classic vampire things, these vampires must be invited into homes, and they can also claim homes to keep others out. So they, like if a vampire lives like in an apartment or something, they can lay claim to that apartment, and then no other vampire can cross into it. If 2 people own a home, they each lay claim to it, and the vampire has to get an invitation from both individuals that live there in order to enter the home. I thought that was really cool. As these vampires age, they get more powerful. So in like the Twilight vampires, that is the exact opposite. In their first year of life, they are the strongest because they have their human blood running through them. And here, the farther away they get from that, the more powerful they get. A way that we see that power is with mind reading. So older vampires can read younger vampires' minds as well as humans. Younger vampires can only read other vampires' minds that are younger than them and humans. And so like by extension, a very new vampire could only read human minds. And I thought that was like a really interesting kind of like hierarchy role. You could kind of line up vampires in a lineup of age purely based on their ability to read each other's minds. So that's cool. And like too, if you're an older vampire, you can like keep secrets from anyone that you change. Kind of messed up, but also kind of cool. Another notable thing, so vampires can drink blood forever without feeling full. This is, I think, pretty standard for most vampires, although in Twilight we do get like fullness described, and like Edward describes himself as like feeling soupy at one point. So those ones can overeat, these ones cannot. And in particular, the feeling that these vampires are chasing is the feeling of the pulse in their bodies. It isn't necessarily the blood itself and like what the blood tastes like, although they do enjoy the taste of it. When they're drinking, they can feel the heartbeat of their victim in their own hearts, and it makes their own heart beat when otherwise it like just doesn't. And so the way that these vampires are wired is that they are wired to crave that beating of their heart specifically. So it always encourages them to go for a specific person. If they drink out of glasses, I don't think that they get the heartbeat effect. At least that wasn't described at all. And if they are drinking from someone that's like already dead, where their heart is already stopped, that also won't give them a heartbeat. They have to drink from someone who is like actively dying in order to get that feeling. And I thought that was really interesting. They describe it like a drum and like their chest feeling full and empty. So while they're feeding and while they're getting that heartbeat from their victim, they feel like this fullness in their chest and they feel like really alive and with it. Whereas immediately after their victim is dead and after they finished with them, they are immediately craving that beat again because it feels like their chest just empties out and they feel this hollowness that they're trying to fill. An interesting shade of color to this blood and like heart pumping thing. So in instances where they have followed their victim for a long time, they can savor this drinking a little bit more and they can feel the heartbeat perhaps a little bit stronger, or at least in a more satisfying way. And so it sates that empty feeling for a little bit longer even after they finished feeding. But one thing that was really notable that we see depicted just once in the book, I'm pretty sure. But one thing that we see depicted is that if you leave your victim alive and if you're close with the victim, I guess they aren't really a victim if they're still alive at that point. But if you lead the person that you're feeding from alive and you have like a close bond with them and you can tolerate being with them afterwards and not just like drinking them to completion, then you can continue feeling that heartbeat for like a while. Like the way that it was described, it sounded like they felt it for 10 minutes or something afterwards. Like it was there for a while, and so it really created that fullness effect for them for a long time, which seems like a really cool solution to them constantly feeling empty. But it also would probably take a very special person for them to be able to feed not to completion on and then still maintain the secrecy that vampires exist, because that is one thing that they are kind of concerned with in this book. They do want to keep their secrecy or like their existence kind of under wraps, but there's no enforcement of that. They just kind of enforce it themselves. Another piece of the lore with these vampires is that creators of vampires are expected to teach their creations. This is something that we see when we get like into Sabine's story, that she didn't really have any education, and so that really comes to light by like these other vampires teaching her all this stuff. So the next vampire trait that we have, that is another like pretty standard one, these vampires must be killed via their heart being killed. That's how they refer to it. So you have to like stab them specifically in the heart. If you stab them anywhere else, it really won't do anything. It's the heart that is their weak point. And so when you do kill them and when you like stop their heart, what happens to their body? Their body will immediately decompose to the state at which it would have decomposed had they died when they originally died. So, for instance, let's say Maria were to die today, she would oh my God, that's a lot of math. No, it's not. 502 years. So, okay, let's say we stabbed Maria today. Her body would automatically decompose by 502 years. So she would be just ashes and dust and whatever bodies turn into after they die, after they've been dead for that long. she would be completely gone. Whereas someone like Alice, who died in 2019, that's been 6 years. Look at this math we're doing. Her body decomposition would obviously be far less. But it would immediately happen. So she would not be looking good, that's for damn sure. But she would not be quite as, broken down as our gal Sabine at 502 years. So, things to keep in mind. When you kill a vampire, there might be a mess. In this book, we do meet one vampire. His name's Hector. He's kind of cool. But so we do meet a vampire, and he doesn't really regard vampires as true immortals. And his reasoning is that their humanity just slowly dies as they continue this existence. And so the farther away they get from their mortal life, bits and pieces of who they were as a mortal, as a human, their humanity, if you will, bits and pieces of that humanity die. So their ability to feel sympathy, their ability to feel joy or compassion or empathy or really anything like that, these little pieces of them are slowly dying throughout their vampiric state. And one of the POVs that we see in here, you kind of see a couple of these stones just fall off of her personality. She describes it as just this piece of her just broke off into the darkness. So it does happen. We do see that happening kind of firsthand at one point. And the person who's talking about this, Hector, he says that that this is the reason why he doesn't consider vampires true immortals, because once all of those little stones, I guess, of their humanity fall away from the core of them that's now a vampire, the vampire that's left will only know, hunger. They'll only know thirst. I guess those are kind of the same things if you're a vampire. They only know the hunt. They only know, what they need. I guess it's kind of like being, like when you're a baby and you have like the id and like all they care about is like their needs that they have. And then like as you grow, like the other pieces of like your personality and like your consciousness kind of slate into place. This is kind of like, so you build that up in your human life, right? And now as a vampire, you're starting with this whole personality, and you basically like kind of do that in reverse. So it's like going back to being a baby again, but you are a very lethal baby at this point who requires blood. You're not really a baby, but you get what I mean. You're just, babies want to be fed and protected, and really old vampires who have lost their humanity, they want to feed. And that's it. That's both ends. They just want to keep on going and surviving. That's what I'm getting at. But so all of these pebbles have like stripped away from our vampire, right? And so now this vampire only sees hunger. They only see thirst. They are feral, I would say. And so these vampires, because they have no self-control, they are just going after people. Insatiable, just thirst, left and right. Bodies, left and right. They just, they rack up a body count. What can I say? They're feeding. They're trying to just take care of themselves. And so Hector is saying that when that happens, that people will catch up with them, that they will be killed either by another vampire because they have stepped on someone's toes, or they'll be killed by the people that they are targeting. The people will band together and they will come back and they will fight them. And they will find their demise that way because they're just too bloodthirsty to be able to focus on anything else like fighting people. So I thought that was a really interesting take. I would argue that you're still immortal at that point because you're still kicking and causing trouble if you are out here battling people and feeding on people insatiably. But I totally get like the sentiment that he has with that. So another interesting thing about these vampires is that they can both bleed their own blood and they can also drink each other's blood. So at one point, or actually no, at a few points, the vampires seem to be drinking each other's blood and they are getting like sustenance out of that. They are able to sate their thirst with that a little bit, not necessarily with drinking their own, but with drinking another vampire's blood. And so I thought that was pretty interesting and also really helpful. If they don't actually want to kill anything, they can just like sate their thirst a little bit by drinking another vampire's blood. And that vampire then has the advantage of being strong as well, because these vampires, they're strong, they're fast. What is the quote? You're incredibly fast and strong. God, I knew I would get there eventually. But yeah, like, it's just like that, you know? They're like the Cullens in that way. But that's like really where it ends. These are definitely people drinkers, all of them. We do not explore their ability to drink animal blood. Therefore, we are going to assume that they can't survive on it. We meet enough vampires that if drinking animals was on the table, that probably one of them would have tried it. Okay. Anyway, they can drink each other's blood, which is a really interesting concept. Another thing that we find out about these vampires is that the promises that they make are absolutely binding. And we see this employed because one of the vampires that we're following is tricked into staying with a couple that she's kind of like taken up with. They formed a coven of 3. The couple that she's with, they trick her into promising that she will never leave them. And so promptly after that, when she wants to leave, she finds that she is physically unable to do so. And it's because their promises are literally binding. Like in Harry Potter, the unbreakable promise, you know, like that Snape makes with Draco's mom to like keep him safe. It's like that, except they have no way of telling, like on the receiving end, that there's nothing physical that happens to them. They have no way of telling that they have just made like an unbreakable promise. They just, whenever they go to try and do the thing that they've promised not to do, they simply can't do it. So, the vampire that says that she won't run away from this couple, she tries to run away from them afterwards, and she is physically incapable of doing so. So that like really sucks for her, and she doesn't like it. And then one thing that was very interesting to me, this is the second to last thing that we have on our list of traits, because we did get a lot of really good lore about these vampires. Graves for these vampires are like quicksand. When vampires like stand on a grave, it's like standing on quicksand for them. They immediately are like drawn down to the earth. If they put their hands on there, their hands are also kind of stuck. Graves and grave dirt holds down vampires like so well. It takes all of their strength. They can like drag themselves off of the grave and like be okay that way and escape, but they really will like level them, or they'll humble them real quick and kind of hold them down. So graves are very spooky for vampires to walk on at all. And then the last thing that we have for our vampire traits, their eyes are like backlit. Like every single time we have like these vampires on screen, every single time they're really being described and like someone's identifying another vampire, it's because their eyes are lit. Like actually just bloop. Like you know those skeletons at Home Depot right now? Like the more like, I guess they aren't at Home Depot anymore because it's almost Halloween and now we have to put out the Christmas decorations. Ugh. But you know those skeletons that you could get in like July where like their little eyes are lit up and like you walk by them and you're like, whoa, that's kind of spooky. I didn't realize his eyes were going to be like lit up. Yeah, I don't know why I took my glasses off to show you that, but look, this is what lights up the eye. But yeah, they're backlit. It's very interesting. And then when they lose their humanity, like as these stones are falling away, that light behind their eyes goes out. And that's when you can tell they're like in feral mode, and they're very dangerous in their feral mode. And very spooky. The last thing I want to touch on for this book is kind of this poem that this whole book centers around that I think is kind of cool. So it says, and we get this from Hector, which is like just a vampire that, yeah, he just kind of enters and exits, and he's just kind of a background character, but Hector's cool. His primary issue in this book is that he doesn't have any new books to read, and I can't relate to that because I'm in the year of our Lord 2025, and there are millions of books out there, but I really feel for him. Rip Hector, you would have loved Kindles. Anyway, thank you also to Hector for dropping the lore on this poem that goes, bury my bones in the midnight soil, plant them shallow and water them deep, and in my place will grow a feral rose. I thought that was pretty cool. The vampires will refer to themselves not as vampires. A lot of the older ones refer to themselves as buried in the midnight soil. It'll be like, to like, if they're asking someone else if they're a vampire, they're like, oh, are you also part of the midnight soil? Are you in the midnight soil? And then some of the women in here too, they call each other feral roses because they are in relationships and that is their pet name. And they are vampires. So it's very fitting. Next, I do want to touch on a few spoilers for this book. Like I said before, this book is really good. I enjoyed it a lot. It really had me up until like those last, 7 or 8 pages. Even if I didn't quite know like the whole point of everything, even if it felt like an episode of My 600-Pound Life where it's just like, yeah, we're going to follow this person for a year and just see what their life is like. Like, that's really the impression that I got from these people of like, yeah, we're just going to follow these people through the end of their lives and to the beginning of their vampire lives. It's fine. But I do want to get, into some spoilers and into like how all of these stories tie together. The first big spoiler is that our character Maria from the 1520s becomes Sabine. So Maria ends up marrying a viscount in Spain, and of course she does, because even though she's a lesbian, these are the 1520s, and she is going to marry a man, she is going to have children. And so, surprise, no one could have guessed this, she hates every minute of her marriage and every minute of everything after she gets married to this viscount. And she ends up befriending a widow, the widow that came to her village in her childhood. She ends up befriending that widow. That widow runs an apothecary. She has set up a kind of permanent residence there. And the widow makes her tonics to help her not get pregnant. The reason she is able to go to the widow on a regular basis to get these tonics is because she has told her family, her in-laws, that she is taking tonics to help her get pregnant because she has been married to the viscount for definitely over 5 years, but maybe closer to 10 years. She's been married to him for a really long time. And she has not had any pregnancy at all. Even though the viscount is making his best efforts to make a baby, she is not getting pregnant, which is great for her, but also not great because then she has to keep trying with him. When Maria is befriending this widow, she knows that something is off about her, and the widow doesn't name it at all, but she does call it vampirism. She doesn't call it that. She doesn't call it being a vampire. But what she does say is she describes herself as being free. And she offers to Maria, would you like to be freed? And Maria's like, oh, hell yes, thank you so much. And so this vampire, the widow, who is named Sabine, mind you, she turns Maria. And so the way this happens and the way that you turn a vampire in this world is through reciprocal drinking of blood. So Sabine bites Maria, drinks a little bit of blood, and then she opens up her own neck to Maria and is like, take a little drink. And Maria's like, don't mind if I do. And Maria doesn't stop at a little drink. She, as she was in her human life, she is insatiable. And so we see that this turning is relatively instant for when it's happening. There is no sickness period. There is no risk of death, really. At least it doesn't sound like it. I guess the only risk of death that you would really have is if the vampire who's turning you can't stop drinking from you. So that's fair. But so she starts drinking Sabine's blood back, and her insatiableness in her human life really comes out because she ends up completely draining Sabine and killing her right there, as immediately as she's turned. And from there, Maria is like, oh my God, I'm going to take these skills out on the road. She immediately goes and kills her husband, all of her in-laws, and she just eviscerates all of them. And she decides, I'm going to take the name Sabine. And so now we still have Sabine running around. Maria is actually dead and gone. We now have Sabine running around as a bloodthirsty and ruthless woman. Maria, who has become Sabine, chooses to keep the widow getup. She decides, because at this time, the best or the easiest way for a woman to be able to move around freely is to be a widow. So she is taking that for all it's worth. She also similarly calls herself free as opposed to calling herself a vampire. And when we first see her, like when she first becomes Sabine or a vampire, she has a super gory and like bloody phase where she's just taking lots of victims. She's constantly chasing that heartbeat that she really wants. Sabine encounters other vampires for the first time 10 years after she has turned. And she meets them immediately after she has killed a sex worker, and she runs into two vampires. These two vampires are hunting down a group of drunk men. And, well, one of the vampires has inserted himself into the drunk group to make a group of 3, but it's 2 humans that are drunk, 1 male vampire, 1 female vampire, and they eat them. And so Sabine witnesses this, and she's like, whoa, they're just like me. And she almost interrupts them feeding, but I'm glad she doesn't, because that would have been bad news bears for Sabine. And she also would not have learned any of the vampire lore that we learn in this book. So that would have been unfortunate for us as people reading her POV. But so in this first season, before she meets Hector, she is like going through like the super gory, bloody phase. Once she meets him, he attempts to civilize her. And by doing that, what he's like practically doing, he is challenging her to go longer between her feedings and to find and target specific marks and to target them for specific amounts of time. So he challenges her to find and like stalk and like hunt someone down for 2 weeks before killing them. And so what she does is she finds this person, she frequents the bars that they go to, she kind of stalks them, but like in a really friendly way to them. She just befriends them over a couple weeks, and then she kills them at the end of the bet that or at the end of like the task that she's been given from Hector. And she finds that eating them is now a lot more satisfying. And so she adopts this kind of lifestyle. She also learns from Hector how to like really blend in and how to make it so that like she can stay in a place for like a while and still eat. So he is saying that, you know, people don't blame people that they are familiar with when people start dying. And that is true. But my question to freaking Hector in this point is, okay, so yeah, you're the new person, you're coming to town, you're making a good impression with other people, but do you think that like you befriending them is going to prevent them from being able to put together a pattern? Like, I'm sorry, I can have like a new neighbor be as kind to me as they want, but if people just start dying within like a month or something after this person shows up, like, I don't care how nice they were to me in that entire month before anyone died, I'm gonna be like, what in my community has changed since the last time a lot of people started dying? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's Hector. Maybe Hector knows something about this. Like, on one hand, I got the logic, but on the other hand, it's like, bro, you really think that like even back in this time period, right? Like, you really think that people are incapable of seeing a freaking pattern like that, especially when it's a pattern that involves life or death. People, their ability to find things and see things when it comes to matters of life and death, you would be amazed at how like at how observant people can be in very high stakes situations. You would be amazed, Hector. Like, come on, give these people, like, just give us a little bit more credit. And so Sabine just kind of goes on like a 350-year blood tour for the first, 350 years of her existence as a vampire. She tours around with like other vampires. She meets a couple different couples and she's just kind of existing. And then she finds Charlotte and she's like, wow, I want to make you my wife. And so she does exactly that. And Sabine and Charlotte spend about 100 years together. And during those 100 years, Charlotte is slowly watching Sabine lose the stones of her humanity off of the scaffolding of her vampirism. And Charlotte hates it. And low-key, she also hates being a vampire because now she has to kill people. Now she is death. And she really doesn't enjoy what she has to do with her life now. And she really kind of hates that she is just stuck in one spot forever and that she is going to lose her humanity. She thinks that that is like one of the worst things that someone could do to someone else. So suck on that, Sabine. Yeah, Charlotte is hating all of the moments where she is seeing Sabine lose her humanity over these 100 years together. And then Charlotte makes a pass at trying to be a vampire who just doesn't kill anyone. And Sabine like swiftly shows her why that's not an option. So Charlotte tries to not kill this man whose blood she starts sucking, but then Sabine immediately goes after him after he runs away, and she comes back with his heart and 2 more hearts, and she's like, so I just had to kill 3 people because you wouldn't kill that one guy because he already went and told 2 other people. So like, make your choices, but you need to see the things through that you start, i.e. you need to kill your marks when you are feeding off of them because they will literally go and tell other people that you are doing this and that vampires are real, and we can't have that. So, fair. Very fair. You can't just go around creating a fucking panic, Charlotte. But throughout this whole kind of story, or like throughout this whole kind of power struggle of Charlotte trying to not kill things and Sabine being like, you're too empathetic, you're too empathetic, you're too sympathetic, like you have too many emotions like for these people, you dwell too much on these things, you really just need to like not think about it and just cut it off. Sabine really starts to like resent her for that, and Charlotte's like, you literally fell in love with me because I had so many of these emotions, like can you like pick one thing and stay with it? Which, I mean, honestly, that's like the tragedy of so many like love stories, right? Oh, I loved this thing about this person until I hated it. And that's always tragic. So I feel for her on that level. But you're a vampire also. Like, what did you expect? So after like the first time that Sabine really goes full feral to Charlotte, so the lights behind her eyes go out. She's described as having her eyes go like completely black. She is obviously like palpably dangerous to Charlotte in this moment. Once she like kind of comes back to herself a little bit more, she's not like fully back to herself. She's still like halfway into feral mode, but they're like going to sleep. Sabine forces Charlotte to promise that she will never hurt her. And Sabine, keep in mind, has been in charge of all of Charlotte's vampire lessons because Sabine created Charlotte. Sabine did not tell Charlotte that all of her promises are extremely binding. So, by randomly forcing Charlotte to promise that she will never hurt her, she's made sure that Charlotte will never ever be a threat to her after she goes feral, because she knows that Charlotte would be ready to kill her if she went feral, because Charlotte thinks that it's better to die than to just be a feral vampire. So she's losing these stones, and at one point, when the relationship sours, that is when the last stone is lost, and the lights just don't come back on in Sabine's eyes, and Charlotte is scared for her life. And she can't do anything about it, literally, because she cannot physically defend herself to Sabine because she promised to not hurt Sabine. So Sabine is just now in like full feral mode, and like 80 years later she's coming after Charlotte, and Charlotte can't do a thing about it, like not even if she wanted to, because guess what, even 80 years later this promise is still in effect. And so this is like kind of the first part, and granted, like this is like very far into the book, but this is kind of the first part where like the stones of the story really start falling off and being like, what did you expect to happen? Or like, was there any thought put into this? I don't think there was. So somehow Sabine has lost all of the stones of her humanity. She is now left with her vampire core. But somehow, in this vampire feral mode with only her core left, Sabine is able to hold it together and hunt down Charlotte via all of her girlfriends and her lovers that she has on like the 100 years that she is running away from Sabine. Sabine is hunting these women down. She is seducing them. She is killing them. And then she starts turning them. And Charlotte is just like, oh no, I need to get away from you. Oh no, Sabine, you're the worst. Meanwhile, she is like racking up bodies here in the background, right? Like her lovers are getting killed. Her lovers are going missing. Her lovers are being turned. It's like, girl, everything that these people have in common is you. Like maybe you should stop trying to be with people for a little bit until Sabine will stop freaking following you around and killing these people. Like her love life has a body count. And like not in that way, a body count of like death. So yeah, I guess my like whole kind of issue with this ending and how it's presented to us is the fact that Sabine is supposed to be this feral vampire who like can only think about thirst and how much she wants to drink blood from people. Yet somehow at the same time where Sabine is only seeing thirst, Sabine is very pointedly hunting all of her ex-girlfriends, lovers, and girlfriends to get back at her ex-lover. Like, which one is it, Miss VE Schwab? Which one is it? Is she feral and thirsty AF? Or is she just, like, vengeful AF and somehow this is, like, overriding her vampiric core? Because I thought that that was, like, literally impossible. You told me that was impossible with Hector. Like, come on. Which one is it? Which one is it? Is her pettiness really that strong that it can outweigh her vampiric core? Because something tells me it is not. Because pettiness seems like a stone of humanity that she probably lost. Or is that just like the last one that's there and it's like stuck in like, you know, let's say her vampiric core is like humanoid shape. Is it just like stuck in her butt or something? And that's why she's so mad. Just make it make sense, you know? You're either feral or you're like calculated and cunning and all of this stuff. Like I feel like you can't be you can't be both at the same time. That's not how that works. And so at one point, Charlotte maintains a girlfriend named Penny. Penny gets turned into a vampire and Penny is like kind of stoked. Penny's like, yeah, let's go celebrate. We can be vampires together. We're going to do it. And Charlotte's like, I am not going to make you watch me decline. Like, I just watched Sabine decline, and no, actually, not at all. She kills Penny. We don't have to remember Penny. Bye, Penny. I'll never forget you. So this has happened like what, 50 years ago? And so Charlotte's like, okay, I'll just take lovers, like just one night stands. And so she has all these one night stands. And wouldn't you know, Sabine evolves her punishment and she starts going after her one night stands in the form of now Alice, who is a one night stand. And instead of just like going back and killing these girls, no, she's just like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'll just turn your one night stand and now you have to deal with her. I feel really bad for Charlotte because like an immortal life, being forced to live by yourself is really sad. And I couldn't imagine that. I have a husband, you know, I couldn't imagine like not living my mortal life with him. Like that would be so incredibly lonely. That would be a sad thing. And I would be very sad if I didn't meet him or have him. So on one hand, I get it. We just want company. We want someone who loves us. We want to be around someone that makes us feel good. I can't blame you for that. But also, if you trying to do that is actually like putting all of these people in danger, maybe you should find something else to make you feel less alone. Go to movies, Charlotte. Read a book, Charlotte. Become obsessed with a movie. I don't know. Titanic is a good one if you want to feel like you're in love, Charlotte. You saw the Titanic. She literally, actually, they do have a Titanic reference in here. She mentions seeing the Titanic and like hearing that news about it going down because Charlotte died in the 1800s and Sabine was in the 1500s. So they were both alive and around to see the Titanic sink, and I think that's really interesting. Fun fact, I am obsessed with the Titanic. Anyway, yeah, Charlotte's just kind of being greedy with wanting these hookups. So, like, find a hobby, my dear. Find literally anything else to do besides, like, putting people in danger. You know, I don't know. Like, she's living in the time of the freaking internet. Like, drum up some parasocial relationship with, I don't know, like Taylor Swift or something. Like, I bet you would love Taylor Swift's music, Charlotte. Just, I don't know, do something other than like putting people in trouble. But so, okay, I just want to give like a really notable mention to Sabine in this book. So Sabine goes from like spending the first 350 years of her vampiric existence to, in the back half of this book, when she's mentoring Charlotte, Sabine has gone from the first 350 years of her existence, like being this bloodthirsty vampire, to now in the back half of this book, when she is giving Charlotte vampire lessons, now just dropping bars of philosophy, like just mad bars of philosophy. Here is one of the examples. People die, she says, every hour of every day. The vast majority will do so through accident or sickness, age, or folly. And yes, a handful at our hands. She rises to her feet, approaching Charlotte, and even though Sabine is only slightly taller, she always seems to loom larger than her height and wider than her frame. Death comes, and sometimes it is kind, and often it is cruel, and very rarely is it welcome. But it comes all the same. Sabine's hand comes to rest against her heart. The difference is, we make something of that death. Their loss is our gain. Kind of spooky, right? But so, like, in the back half of this book, Sabine just goes from being like bloodthirsty and like, I'm gonna drink everyone's blood, to saying crap like this of just like, oh yeah, no, this is the philosophy. We make something of their death. Never fear, dear Charlotte. We make something of their death. Like, I'm sorry. When did you have any time to develop this philosophy when you were just out here like murdering for 350 years? Like that, I'm sorry, I don't believe that. Just like I don't believe that you were somehow feral and also very pointedly hunting down people. I don't believe that at all. So, okay. These aren't even like our biggest atrocities, I guess, that have happened in this book. So like in the last few pages, like packed full of them. And I just really need to unpack it. And I didn't even write it down. So you guys are just going to get this out of my heart. Okay. But so somehow, right, Sabine has kept it together in this feral mode for so long. She turns Alice, and then Alice and Charlotte are both like, okay, well, we need to get back at Sabine. And Alice is asking Charlotte, she's like, well, why didn't you kill me like you killed Penny? And Charlotte's like, oh, well, I can't kill Sabine, but maybe you can. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And so Alice is like, yeah, sure. Okay. I'm pretty mad about this. And then Charlotte is like, oh, actually, bonus, if you kill Sabine, you will become a human again, because you have been so freshly killed by Sabine that if you kill her, you will become a human again. Don't ask me the physics of it. That's just how it works. It's just so new. You can't even do it if you're a week old, but you, who is like 2 days old, who are you, 2-day old vampire, you can do it and turn back into a human. Alice does not think about this at all. She hears what she wants to hear and she says, yes, okay, thank you very much. I will do this. And so Charlotte and Alice then go out and they lure in Sabine, or I guess they lure Sabine to come take Alice. Sabine takes Alice back to her apartment that she has commandeered from some people she killed. That's what Sabine kind of does. She'll kill people and then just take their houses, and she lives there while she's staying in any particular place. And so again, actually, with that little tidbit, how is Sabine flying under the radar in these places? Like, do they just like not question that a whole family died and she just is living in their house now? Like, I'm sorry, you can have as much Riz as like the Rizzler. And I think that people are not going to be able to look past that. Miss Schwab. Anyway. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So Sabine lures Alice back to her apartment that she has commandeered from people that she has killed. And because she's a vampire. And Alice is like sitting there. They're like talking to each other. They're flirting. And Alice is like, oh, I really want to kill this girl, but I don't really know what to do it. Like, where's my moment? And while they're like sitting there, having a wonderful time being two gals talking by the fire in the living room, whatever, Alice notices, there's something shiny on Sabine. She's wearing something shiny. Oh, yeah, no, don't worry. Sabine is just casually wearing chainmail right now to have this conversation with you. Yeah, no, she definitely doesn't know that anything's up right now. And Alice is like, oh, shit, she's wearing chainmail. This puts us in a little bit of a pickle. And so then, I don't know why, but Alice decides, I'm going to take a shower about this. And so she goes into the bathroom. These vampires, I forgot to mention their like basic senses on these traits, but these vampires can hear really well. They can hear heartbeats of like everyone around them. So she goes into the bathroom. She is like pretending to wash her hands and like sing and do something. Obviously, she's not using the bathroom. I'm just now realizing, because vampires, it's not like they poop. What the hell did Sabine think she was doing for all that time? Just washing her hands, having a wonderful time looking at herself in the mirror? Okay, so that makes this even worse, I guess. I didn't even account for that when I was talking about... Okay, whatever. So Alice goes to the bathroom for some unknown reason, and she ends up taking a shower, but like she goes into the bathroom just unquestioned, and she starts singing and running the sink and like just doing all this weird shit. Sabine doesn't question it at all, doesn't think about it at all. Why would she? Alice is just a simple farmer. Not really. But so Alice is just like, in there vibing. She's singing this song, and she like is singing, I guess, so loud, she describes, that she is able to cover up the sound of her breaking the stone counter where the sinks are in this bathroom to give herself a little weapon of sorts. And then she just goes and gets in the shower, and who comes in to join her but Sabine, who, mind you, was just wearing literal chainmail armor to make sure that Alice can't hurt her. She enters the shower with her butt-ass naked, because that's really great. Yeah, you've gone from wearing fucking armor to now just being butt-ass naked in the shower with Alice. Okay, fine. This makes no sense, my gal, Sabine. Maybe this is the feral side coming out, and her feral side is secretly just her not having any thoughts whatsoever. But so she like comes and she enters this shower with Alice, and then Alice with this weapon that she has somehow secretly made, even though they all have amazing hearing, because just the power of her voice covered it up so beautifully that Sabine didn't even notice, and that Sabine felt comfortable enough to take off her armor to go into the shower with her and shower naked. She's just like out there like, oh yeah, this is great. And then what do you know? Alice kills her. And she immediately turns into dirt and dust, because she should have died like 500 years ago, almost 500 years ago since it's 2019 in this book. And so, I mean, that was predictable, right? She just becomes like the necklaces that she's worn, that she's collected from all of her victims over the years. So yeah, Sabine never could have seen that one coming. That's crazy. But so then Alice, she now thinks, oh, I'm going to become a human again. And so Alice goes and sits on the couch in this apartment, and she's like waiting, staring at the ceiling for her heartbeat to come back. And guess what doesn't come back but her fucking heartbeat, because Alice is a vampire, and it is too late to go back from that. Once you're a vampire, you can't turn back from that. At least not in this world. And then, oh my God. This ending is so shitty. But so then Charlotte comes home. Well, not home, but so then Charlotte comes over to this apartment basically to check up on Alice and be like, "Hey man, did you do the hit? Did you do the thing that I asked you to do?" And Alice is like, "I did it. I'm not going to become a human again, am I?" And Charlotte's like, "No, sorry." Haha. And she's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I just did this for you. I just put myself out here for you. I could have gotten killed doing this." And she's like, "Sorry." And then it becomes like a huge deal for like 2 paragraphs. It's like, oh my God, Lottie lied. Oh my God. Oh my God, this vampire who's been going around killing people since what year? Since 1827. Oh my God. Oh my God. She lied to me. Oh my God, she lied. She lied. Like, oh my God, that's so crazy. It's almost like she's an immortal being with her own motives. Whoa, why are we so surprised at this, Alice? God, like, it's like everyone got stupid at the end. But so Alice is like freaking out. She's like, "Oh my God, Lottie lied to me. Oh my God." Which, why the hell would Lottie lie about something so, like, obviously fake, like, when it doesn't happen? Like, are you kidding me? You shouldn't think that she would have to, like, atone for this. Whatever. But so then Charlotte's having like this whole epiphany right now as she's sitting next to Lottie, because Lottie just showed up at this apartment, and she's like, "Oh my God, Lottie lied to me. Lottie lied to me. Lottie lied to me. I'm gonna kill her." And so she had poisoned this wine. She put grave dirt in this wine because, you know, the graves are like quicksand. Dead earth is the term. But so, like, if they come in contact with dead earth, it'll hold them down. She has put dead earth into a wine glass that is full of blood. She has Charlotte drink the tainted wine glass. And so then Charlotte is like poisoned, and she's just like, ugh. Like, she's like fully incapacitated at this point. And Alice kills her. To the shock of no one, because Alice is just now freaked out about Lottie lying to her, which is still like mystifying on a lot of levels. Why is she so surprised that she lied to her? Whatever. And so Alice kills her. And then she's like, "All right, well, I'm gonna go home." Like, you know, like at the end, like in Forrest Gump, when he's like on that really long run and he gets to the end and he's like, "Well, I'm kind of tired now. I think I'm going to go home." And then he just starts walking back, and like this whole group of runners is just like, "What? What? Surely you don't mean that, right?" And he's just walking back. He doesn't really care. Yeah. I feel like that's what happens here, is she like kills her, and she's like, she just like wakes up in her consciousness, and she's like, "Well, I'm gonna go home now." And so she walks home, and her father calls her on the phone. This is the first time we have ever spoken to her father, like in real time. Otherwise he's just like, you know, some NPC off in the background. But so Dad, what a great time to introduce a new character, right? I would prefer if more books introduce new people on the last page or two, personally. But so Dad calls her. What do they talk about? Nothing in particular. He's just like, "You know, I really hope that you're keeping your chin up at school. It can be hard, but, you know, just keep your chin up, my gal." And she's like, "Thanks, Dad." And then she just goes and walks back to her dorm. Which, this is why I'm really glad that there's no epilogue. I'm really glad that there's no sequel planned. I'm really glad that nothing else is going to like come out of the story, and that we're just going to set this down right here. At least I hope we do. Because, what do you mean? She's just gonna go back to school? She goes to Harvard, mind you, by the way. That was like held from us until like 70% of the way into this book, which is also just stupid. It literally has nothing to do with anything. But so she's a student at Harvard, which means she's in the Boston area. And so she's just gonna go back to school now? Like, is Harvard just gonna have like a weird rate of like missing students for the next 4 years while she finishes her degree? Is she gonna finish faster because she's a vampire? Is she gonna stay in school? Is she gonna go visit her family back in Scotland? Can she even fly? Well, they can fly on planes. Other people flew on planes earlier in this book. So she can take a plane home. Maybe not with modern technology, though. I guarantee you, like a post 9/11 vampire traveling with those body scanners, like, I feel like it would just alert up the whole thing because it would just be like a slab of rock in there. They'd be like, excuse me, you aren't made of the proper materials. You know, like, I feel like there's a lot of thought that did not go into the back end of this book and how vampires navigate in real life, I will say. However, I will suspend my disbelief on that because we don't see anyone after 9/11 going on a plane. It's fine. I'm fine. You mean to tell me, though, that Alice is just going to go back to living her regular ass life? Like, I severely doubt that that is even an option right now. Like, are you just telling me that these vampires all just have enough self-control that it's just like, oh yeah, no, just like live in society? Like, is she gonna get her degree? What is her degree even in? This was information that I was hoping to find out, is what the hell is she studying? But don't worry, we never found out, so I guess it doesn't really matter that much. Maybe she won't even get her degree since it wasn't fleshed out. Oh my god, I'm really glad that there's no more of this story coming because I would hate to see where it goes, and I don't think that I would be happy with anywhere that it went. We're being honest here. I have so many feelings about the end of this book. I think it was so stupid. And now I can kind of see why people, like, they kind of vibe with VE Schwab books, but like they don't really like them. Because if they're anything like this one, and if the ending is handled anything like this one in her other books, like, I'm afraid to read my other one that I got. Like, maybe now I'm regretting a little bit The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. That's the other VE Schwab book I have on my shelf that I'm planning to read here pretty soon. So, like, you know, we'll see what happens. But God, what a terrible ending. Like, and that's the thing too. I really vibed with like 90% of this book. Like, I really enjoyed it. It was literally the last like 7 pages that just made this whole thing come apart. I usually don't share star ratings. I gave this like 2.5 stars because of the ending specifically. Like, if I could read like the first 90% of this book again and then just like never realize what the point was fully, I think I would be okay with that. But yeah, it's like one of those like challah breads, you know, but like unfinished, where like we're starting at like the bottom of the bread, like the unbraided portion that like still needs to be put together, and then like as you're moving through the story, you have like, your 3 veins that they all go in and like tie together. So like seeing how these stories tie together and reading it forward in like real time and seeing these characters kind of come up and seeing them like twine together from 2019 versus like the 15 through the 1800s. It's really cool to see that all come together, and I thought that was handled really well. I thought the mood of this book overall was great, but I just really can't get over the ending. Like, it was so shockingly bad, in my opinion. So, I don't know. Maybe it's worth a read to you. Do you like being angry at books that you read? This might be the one for you. Do you like cool vampires, though? Because these vampires were really cool. I found the vampires themselves really compelling, and I really liked Charlotte's story a lot. Like, I could see this book written as 3 separate novellas about each of the women independently, but the part where their stories converge, like, yeah, I didn't need that. I didn't need that at all. But I probably wouldn't have picked up this book if it wasn't about the 3 stories converging. So I'm glad that I know the stories of these 3 individual women. I just didn't really need to see where they came together. So yeah, this book is cursed. In like a fun way. Anyway, if you made it this far, please leave me a vampire emoji, a girl vampire emoji. These are all girl, woman vampires. Thank you very much. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, please let me know why in the comments. If you would like to see any vampires in particular included on the vampire tier list, please comment them down below. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you did. So, thank you very much. I will see you in the next one. Hocus pocus! Bye.